Hey guys, it's Drac, and today we are doing a review that desperately needed to be done. Somebody in the community needed to do a legitimate, honest review of the Nerf Cam ECS-12. Now, I've got one in, and I'm looking forward to making that review, but to make sure that everything is fair and objective, I wanted to point out a few things. I have laid out blasters here for a size comparison, and then I have blasters here for the sake of argument and explanation so that everything makes sense and is coherent. Now, first off, I have brought out a stryfe because that is essentially what is inside the Elite Cam 12. So the blaster is semi-automatic and uses a pusher and flywheel system with a rev-up switch. Now it's clip-fed, so it is essentially a stryfe. There is a stryfe inside here, and then there is an extra camera built on top, a foregrip, a barrel built on, but no barrel attachment point. There is no in-strike barrel compatibility, and there is no in-strike stock compatibility. That said, it means that a more accurate representation for the shell would be the Rapid Strike CS18. Now, they are almost exactly the same size, which is kind of wild. This has a slightly narrower profile, I believe, but we can check that in a second. And they're both pretty comfortable blasters. The Rapid Strike shoulders nicely and has a good profile, and they're both electronic. The weight in this blaster is in the back, whereas the weight in the Rapid Strike is in the front. Now, for the blaster itself, you can see here that these are the batteries that power the blaster. So for the sake of fairness, I have grabbed 8 brand new batteries, and I'm going to split them 4 and 4 into the most obvious comparison blaster, which is the stryfe. So you can see here that I'm putting, and I believe this blaster takes 8 AA's total, in that it needs 4 to run the camera and 4 to run the blaster itself. So make sure you factor the cost of batteries in when you're factoring in the cost of this blaster, and we'll talk about the cost of the blaster more later on. This stryfe originally had some energizers in it. I'm going to use those to power the camera when it's time to do that part of the review. Now, I'm doing all of this on camera not to bore you, but so that it's completely obvious and transparent that this demonstration is fair, because I want to make a very valid point about kind of how you choose which blaster to buy and what should factor into those decisions. So we've talked about how both blasters are unmodified. Both blasters are essentially semi-automatic flywheel blasters, and we'll talk about the blaster itself in just a moment. And again, I know that this part of the video is boring, but I'll talk a little bit about the blaster itself while I'm doing it. The blaster has, I believe, a 0.3 megapixel camera that it uses to take video. Now, I want to explain kind of what that means and how that works. So that means that the blaster is filming at a low frame rate with very low quality. It's less quality than cell phones from 4 years ago, which means that without kind of dancing around it and being pretty brutally honest, the camera is very bad. If you're buying this blaster for the camera, I don't think that that is an excellent reason to purchase it. Now, over here, I have 2 clips. You can see that this one has Elite darts in it, and this one has Zombie Strike Elite darts. And I've chosen both of these so that I can put Elite darts into the Nerf Cam and Zombie Strike darts into the stryfe, so that we can do a comparison during this review. So those will go in there, this will go in here. Now, I have never used this blaster before, which might be an error, but I assume power is on. And it's making noise. There is a speaker on this side to let me know that it is on. These look like review buttons here, and you can see that our camera is on. We have an SD card up here. The blaster comes with a 4GB SD card. It is not a very nice SD card, and 4GB SD cards are relatively cheap these days. I just plugged it back in, so it does let you know, no SD card, now you have an SD card. There is no built-in memory, and we have the ability to review our footage down here. That's interesting that it's still not recognizing that it's back. Okay, there we go. So it's a rather slow kind of response. This allows us to delete things, this allows us to fast forward through things, this allows us to play and stop and review our footage, and then the actual camera button is down here. It's a really nice feature that the record and stop is up here so that you can record. Well, maybe. I'm trying to record. That's very strange. Blaster is not super duper intuitive. But I'll get to that in a second, and if I have to, I'll make a secondary segment showing how the camera works. That said, I wanted to shoulder the blaster from a standing position, and it's off now, wild. And revving it up, you can hear it is started. I'll try recording again. There we go, we are recording now, which is kind of cool, and I'll upload this footage as a second part to this video, but I'm going to plant my feet right here in front of my rapid strike, and I'm going to fire shouldered. So we have, I feel like I'm skipping darts, but I don't know that, and I'm empty. Alright, so that is, and we'll stop the footage. That is the performance. It's definitely not getting its advertised ranges, but I'm pretty sure that those are supposed to be angled shots. So we're going to fire same profile with this unmodified stryfe and see kind of how that works out. And we have a issue with this clip. It's been used. It's one of my friend's HVZ clips. Alright, so I'm going to go hunt those down, and we'll kind of see what our differences are. So as we come forward, we can see here are the majority of the blue elite darts. It's a very tight grouping, and ironically the older model stryfe, there's one of the blue darts, so it's more or less even. Here's a blue dart, and then here more of the zombie strike darts. So by and large, I think that the average demonstrates that the stryfe is getting ironically better ranges, which is kind of sad because, and this is the part of the video that most people want to hear and need to know about. This blaster's MSRP is 80 American dollars, $79.99. Now that is an absolute ton of money. It's a lot of money to me. It's a lot of money to a child looking to purchase this blaster. And to put that into comparison and kind of put it into perspective, you could buy 4 stryfes instead of the Elite Cam. You could buy 2 rapid strikes at their MSRP. They're currently on sale. You could realistically probably get 3 because I know they're $27.99 right now. Or you could buy the materials and the blasters to build your own Night Fury, more or less, for that price. So you could have this blaster, which performs slightly worse than a stryfe and has a built-in camera, or you could buy all of the things to make a custom blaster like the Night Fury for yourself. The Night Fury's raw parts realistically cost a little bit more. If we want to add it up, it's probably $8 in epoxy putty, another $4 in epoxy, $10 Magnus, $35 long shot, $10 for the Firefly these days, and then various PVC and polycarbonate that's gone into it, plus some LED work. All in all, I think that it's about comparable, especially when you factor in that you will need 8 batteries to use this blaster, as well as the tax that goes into that purchase, which is rather substantial when you're talking about an $80 blaster. As for the features of the blaster itself, it does have a jam door, which gives you access to this dart flap that leads to the flywheels. You can see the pusher in there. It is not letting me rev the blaster while the jam door is open. So that is interesting. You can see the camera here and then the front profile of the barrel. I kind of want to show you and shoulder these next to each other, and the weight is slightly different on them, but they are relatively comparable. They both have comfortable stocks. They both have nice foregrips and profiles. The blaster itself is not terrible. It's a stryfe in a cool rapid strike shell. What makes it really terrible is the price. The price is just too much for what you're paying for. A lot of Nerfers have mentioned that it's much cheaper to buy a stryfe and either build a mount for your camera, or if you don't have a camera type phone, to actually buy a nice video camera and a stryfe and figure out some way to mount them together. You would wind up with much nicer footage and overall probably spend less money. That said, if I'm having a hard time justifying purchasing this blaster for its MSRP, but that really isn't my job. My job is to bring you an honest and complete review with as best facts as I can, and do that while maintaining the integrity of my channel. So I believe that this blaster is not worth $80. I honestly believe that the Rapid Strike is a better value than the Nerf Cam. If you want this shell, I'd buy the Rapid Strike. If you want this performance, I'd buy the stryfe. If you want this camera, I'd buy a camera. That said, if you want all of it wrapped into one package, convenient, with this button that starts it up front, that would get into an extensive amount of work. So if you really want kind of cheap camera integration, then this is maybe a possibility for you, but that's really the only way that I could see it. This flap up here makes very little sense to me. I believe it's designed to kind of shield the screen so that you can see it in bright sunlight, and it is removable. It pops right off. I don't know how that factors into most people's decision. I like the side jam door a lot. I think that that's a cool feature, but it's certainly just not worth that super hefty price tag. I don't like that you're not able to attach your own stock or your own barrel. I do like, however, that the barrel and the stock and the foregrip that it comes with are nice. It's a little bit tight for me. I'm having to kind of crunch, but it is important to realize that the blaster was not designed for someone who is over 6 feet tall. It was designed to be the flagship blaster for this Christmas lineup for children. So kind of keeping all of that in mind with a grain of salt, that is how the Nerf Cam works. I don't think it's worth the price, but I've beaten that to death. I am going to give you one more segment kind of showing the quality of this camera. The lighting is okay right now for filming, so I'm going to film, and I'm not going to film while shooting, but I am going to film while running and moving as though there were targets to fire at, so that you can kind of get a feel for how jumpy and or accurate this camera is for your purposes. So here we go. This is running shouldered. This is running while shooting. This is strafing. Here we have rapid movements as though there were multiple targets at a war if we go down and have to go back. So hopefully that gives you a good kind of overview for how the blaster performs. That's been my review of the Nerf Cam ECS-12. I've tried to be as honest as possible without being biased at all and without being rude necessarily, but I think that Nerf could have done better. I think that for their price point they could have given us a semi-decent camera. As always, guys, thanks for watching. There we go, we are recording now, which is kind of cool, and I'll upload this footage as a second part to this video, but I'm going to plant my feet right here in front of my Rapid Strike, and I'm going to fire shouldered. So we have, I feel like I'm skipping darts, but I don't know that, and I'm empty. Alright, so that is, and we'll stop it, and I'm not going to film while shooting, but I am going to film while running and moving as though there were targets to fire at, so that you can kind of get a feel for how jumpy and or accurate this camera is for your purposes. So here we go, running shouldered, running while shooting, this is strafing. Here we have rapid movements as though there were multiple targets at a war if we go down and have to go back. So hopefully that gives you